Conversation is going round. People talking about the colors come to town. Fresh as a summer breeze, she'll take you by surprise.
Good morning and welcome to another fabulous episode of Fresh Waves. Fresh Waves is a Wednesday morning talk show that you can hear any day of the week on the podcasts that are available at freshwaves.ca. So if you're listening to the show, or if you can't listen to the whole thing, don't worry about it. You can go to freshwaves.ca and hear Fresh Waves whenever you like. One of the things I like to do is listen to a podcast while I'm cooking. So today's show is going to be fantastic because we have a chef in the studio, Frank Cutrara.
Yes.
Of Frank Cutrara's Kitchen Cooking Socials.
Cutara's Kitchen.
There you go. We're really happy to have Frank in the studio today. And we have beautiful muffins from Reese's as well. And Reese's has been sponsoring the show with muffins for the last 7 years, so we are very thankful to them and appreciative of all that they do for the show. Jay Rumble is our technical producer behind the board. Hi, Jay.
I sure am. Good morning, Bren. How you doing?
I'm great, thanks. Now, we're going to be talking about cooking, which is a hot topic with everyone, because everyone in the world should know how to cook. If you don't, get on it.
Yeah.
And
I don't know how.
Really?
I'm learning.
Okay, good. You need to learn.
Yeah.
And you have to be safe.
Yes.
So I don't want you, like, I was wearing a big drapey sweater yesterday, and when I reached across the gas stove, it was an interesting experience. I don't have the sweater anymore.
Uh-oh.
It has a bit of a burn mark on it, but that's okay. You live and you learn, right?
You do.
And no one died in the process, so it was all good. So we're going to learn today about cooking and things like that, and if anyone has any questions, how do they get a hold of us during the show to ask a question?
We're on Facebook. Just search the group Freshwaves with Bren Masson. We're on Twitter at Freshwaves Radio, and now we're on Instagram at Freshwaves Radio.
And
so
what about Twitter?
And Freshwaves Radio.
Okay.
So Twitter, Freshwaves Radio, and now on Instagram, Freshwaves Radio.
Okay, so you can message us on any of the social media outlets, and we'll be able to answer your questions, hopefully, on the air. If not, we'll always get you your answer a little later, because we know how to get hold of Frank.
We sure do.
We do. Okay. Good morning, Frank. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks.
Great. So, you have a odd name for your cooking thing. It's a little unusual. What is it exactly that you do? What is a cooking social?
Cooking social is you would bring a group of people to my home, a group between 12 and 18 people.
Wow.
And you have the option to participate in the making of a 4-course dinner. So there's 7 different cooking class or menus that are featured on my website. You choose one of those menus, and the whole group eats that from that menu.
Neat.
Yeah.
That's an unusual kind of a thing.
It is. It's more unusual because it's out of my home, and it's got a really good feel to it. It's got a real soul to the house and a good vibe. It makes people feel. It's also it's exclusive to that group only, which makes it even more special and fuzzy and warm feeling.
Okay, so you're not going to go there with your 6 people and have an extra 12 that you don't know.
No, you're going to bring the 12 to 18 people.
Okay.
And that becomes, and it's either family-based or corporate. We use it for all kinds of celebrations, anniversaries, that kind of thing, bridal parties. And
corporate events, that sounds like fun.
Corporate, yeah, the corporates really love it because it's different from the restaurant experience. Mm-hmm. They really love that, yeah.
So would a corporation tend to be hands-on? Would they help with the cooking, or would they just like to sit there and drink and watch you cook?
That's why I call them cooking socials. They're less hands-on than they used to be. At one time, I've been doing this for 16 years now, this format.
Wow.
And I'd say 8 years ago it was much more hands-on than it is now. Less people are involved with the cooking part, but that's okay. Whatever they're comfortable with,
right? Whatever they like to do. Some people really enjoy
which
cooking,
makes it unique that way. And that because most cooking schools you go to, you have to participate. Mm-hmm. They usually set you up in separate groups, and you go do your thing, and then you come back at the end, and everyone eats the food. My place, we make one course, we execute it. It's fresh. We eat it then. Then the guests have an option to come back up and help out with a second course or not. So we lose more and more people as the night goes on. Yeah. But everyone's having fun and everyone's comfortable with the situation.
I went to a cooking class once, and I think one of the chefs referred to us as home cooks, home chefs, the people who cook at home. That'd be me. But I remember getting there, and normally at these cooking classes that I was signed up for, you just went and sat and watched somebody who really knew what they were doing do things, and you learned by watching them that, some
Yes.
techniques that were going to help you.
That's a demonstration class.
Yeah. And this particular one, we showed up and they said, okay, well, there's your bowl and there's your knife and here's all the stuff you're going to cut up. And I thought, I've been cutting food all day. I have 4 children at home. I don't go out at night and pay money to cut up more food.
Yeah.
It was awful. It was horrible.
Well, that's the general consensus that they don't want to, after working a full day, they don't want to get involved. And that's okay. I have a team, a backup team behind me, so that if they don't get involved, then we pick up the slack. And then that's good entertainment for them. They love that. They love seeing a team of people do their thing. It's pretty cool.
I can imagine it is. How did you ever get into this? I
Well, it was kind of an accident.
Chefs work at restaurants.
I built a kitchen for myself. I was doing renovation, and you would think it was designed for what I do, but it was a big space, and I did it for myself. And then a couple of years later, this kind of came around. I left Angus Glen Golf Club. I was there as the executive chef there for 7 years, and I was doing this part-time throughout the year. I had some time off in the winter months, some 2.5 months off I had, and I would do this thing just to keep my foot in the door of doing something different outside of Angus Glen. And I liked how it left people feel. It just everyone was glowing by the end of the night. So it was a neat thing to do, and I just thought, why not try it on a full-time basis?
Isn't that something?
So
what is an executive chef versus the
executive chef? Is just the main man who controls the kitchen, deals with the economics of the kitchen, the creative part of the menu.
So you would create the menus?
Create the menus, yeah. Cost them out. Put the packages together, put the, all that kind of thing. And run the kitchen, have sous chefs under you, and then cooks, and then delegate the workload.
I'm going to introduce a question that I actually wasn't even going to ask you today, but it's just topical. We had a listener, Pam, that asked, do restaurants reuse the food that they don't use the day before? I mean, and she says, not the stuff that's on people's plates. That's not a thing. But you use 5 pounds out of a 10-pound roast. Will you make roast beef sandwiches the next day? Or she has this theory that every soup that's ever made in a restaurant is just made from the day before's leftovers.
Yeah.
So she never eats soup at a restaurant.
I've never worked in a restaurant like that. No.
No? Everything is fresh every day.
Depends on how it's run, who's running it. I mean, what kind of integrity base are you from, So, no, I've never worked in kitchens like that. I mean, you're always looking, if you have an overflow of cooked meat that you had for a buffet, yes, you could use that meat in sandwiches the next day and on your in your sandwiches or whatever you need to do, but not to reheat food again a second time and make soup out of whatever's left over. That's not my idea of making soup, no.
Okay.
There'd be a better plan behind it than that.
And then she also asked, in a cooking situation, there's so many things that we make that actually taste better the second day, like pasta sauces and lasagna and things like that. And
stews more so, not so much soups. Some soups you have to really, and this I told this all the time. This comes up in cooking classes with soups. People are under the assumption that you start a soup in the morning and by late afternoon it's ready to eat. That's seldomly the case. It's usually I cook my soups and I want to serve them within 35-40 minutes of the time that they were made. So that way they're vibrant and alive. You could taste all the individual components from it that way. As you prolong the cooking time as it sits on the heat, it's just like coffee. It just flattens out and goes one-dimensional, and you lose all those beautiful perfumey kind of notes that you started with.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes. Now with stews, stews and curries, things like that. That's more likely of what you're talking about, where they taste better the next day because they have time to sort of really mature.
Okay. Are there sauces too that mature as the flavors blend, and that's what people say? Who needs time
Possibly
to
there are a few. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But some sauces are really delicate and have to be served like immediately, almost like the souffle idea, where has to be. It lives. It's lively still, and if it's held, it can flatten out and lose all those beautiful little perfume notes that we were talking about earlier.
Okay, well, we have to take our first break. Jason, take it away. When we get back, we'll continue our conversation with Chef Frank. And if you have any questions, do get a hold of us on social media. And I'm your host, Bren Masson. This is Fresh Waves. We'll be right back.
Hi folks, Kim Mitchell here. However you choose to get around, your ATV, your snowmobile, your boat, car, if you have a motorcycle, all these things take 100% of your attention and skill to operate safely. Alcohol impairs that, and bad things can happen. So, be smart, okay? You know what I'm going to say next.
This message brought to you from the Safe and Sober Awareness Committee.
We're back on Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. This morning we're speaking with Frank Cutrara of Cutara's Kitchen Cooking Socials. You got to think of a shorter name. And joining us right now we have Darlene Shaw as well. And Darlene, you've been to these cooking classes. How are they?
I have been. They're fantastic. First of all, the venue itself is spectacular because it's such a warm yet eclectic space. So it's suitable for corporate, for family, for something romantic, perhaps, any celebration. It's a fantastic space, but truly where it comes alive is in the kitchen. And as somebody who's attended this multiple times, as Frank spoke earlier, you have that opportunity to partake, or you have that opportunity to kick back and have a glass of wine and just be a spectator. But it's got to be one of the funnest, tastiest experiences that you can partake in, and I highly, highly recommend that you do it.
So you could actually have someone who's a closet cook, the one who doesn't really like to cook around other people, and then throughout the night they might just all of a sudden turn into this magnificent chef who's really, really happy to do it.
Well, I don't know what the likelihood of that happening is.
It'd be really fun though if it did.
Chef
Let me
over
know.
one
We'll
lesson,
have a show
but
just about it.
yeah, no, it's fun.
It is fun. I can imagine
it
it's
is
fun because I know that when I do a big family dinner, I have 4 kids who are not kids anymore. They're all young adults, and I used to just get mad because they couldn't see what was to be done. Mm-hmm. Which was really annoying because I'm figuring, okay, isn't it pretty obvious if you're cooking turkey dinner that someone's got to do the mashed potatoes? But apparently not. So I make up little lists now and I give them their list. And it's really fun. They love doing it. Mm-hmm. They put their own spin on what the appetizer tray should look like.
Yeah, that's the way it should be, for sure.
It doesn't look exactly like I would do it. But you know what? It's fine.
We give out recipe handout sheets also to go,
that's
so
good.
that the menus are quite accurate within themselves, and they could take the experience home with them and then try to reproduce it, which is great. I don't expect everyone to do 4 courses, but they'll take 1 course or 1 or 2 courses and try to reproduce it, and they have at least the guidelines of a recipe that they can go by, which is great. And then I always encourage them to sort of augment their own kind of ideas into. Because that's what cooking's all about. It's about playfulness and having fun, right?
Okay.
I think so. That's the way I treat it.
So how do you schedule the meal? Because I always run into this thing where...
Timing, you mean?
Yeah, timing-wise.
Oh, that's a hard one.
Where do you shove the pies in while you're trying to eat, but then the dinger's going off because your pies are done and you're in the middle of dinner?
I come across that. Every cooking class I go through that anxiety because I'm dealing with a group of people who's asking questions and I'm trying to work my team and cook and keep on the timeline. So that requires a great amount of experience. But I think that's most people's faults when it comes to cooking, is weaknesses rather, is that the timing is how do you sort of entertain guests and cook at the same time? That's beyond their means for the most part. So there is an art to it, and I don't know how to teach that.
There has to be, because you can't, you sit down to some turkey dinners and the turkey's hot and
and then you have that chance of overcooking everything by holding it for too long.
And it turns that kind of greenish gray color. It's not the same as that nice, bright, beautiful green.
Yeah.
So what's to say that we eat with our eyes? I know people have said that before. I'm a person who loves stews and chilies and things like that. So chili looks like Alpo, but I still love it.
Yeah.
But other people say, oh, they don't like it if it doesn't look pretty.
Well, some things you could only make pretty. It's hard to make stews look pretty, and like you say, chili, which falls into the stew category.
Right.
Soups and stews. Soups, you can, because you always can garnish with certain things and swirls and of maple syrup or cream or herbs at the end. Mm-hmm. That's not so much of a problem. With a stew, again, you could frisk it up by scattering some fresh herbs on top after it comes out. After it's been heated. It's a harder one to sort of make look pretty. Mm-hmm. But we don't go over the top pretty with what we do at my place. We're cognitive to it. We want to sort of present it. It's very nice, but it's not ridiculous. Like we're not assembling plates with tweezers or anything like that. No.
And you don't have those little carrot flowers that you spent the whole day carving?
We don't do that. No.
Darn.
Yeah.
I'm not coming then.
Oh well. All right.
Actually, I kept one of those carrots in a little dish of water for about a month after I went to a Thai restaurant downtown.
They last forever, don't they?
Well, it was so pretty, I just couldn't throw it away. But sometimes, I think if something is plated, I find this with desserts sometimes. You look at this beautiful plate, you don't want to eat it because you don't want to mess it up. It looks so nice.
Yeah. Yeah. We suffer mildly from that, but not too much.
Well, as a chef,
I've been there, and I eat it all because it's all great. But there's nothing there that isn't wonderful. So you're there for that taste experience. So I say, break it up, dig the fork in, and go for it.
Mm.
You're brave.
I just know it's good. I know from experience.
Well, it's meant to be eaten also.
I'm a dessert girl. You know what? I'm going to go for every course. Right? Try it all once. You can't say you love it, like it until you've indulged. So that's the way to do it in my eyes.
Okay. So. How did you ever decide to be a chef? Like, were you one of those little kids at the age of 8 who was making mud pies and thought, "Ooh, this would be better if it was food"?
It was totally accidental. I was a musician, a drummer, trying to make a go at that, and was running a band, traveling and managing a band and playing in a band and trying to keep the group together and get bookings across northern Ontario, and I guess I crashed, and I needed a couple weeks off to sort of gather myself. Ended up in Yellowknife because this other fellow was going up that way, and ended up in a hotel setting up banquet tables just for some money. I ran out of money when I got there pretty quickly, and then there was a couple people it was a hotel setting up banquet facilities. There was a couple of chefs that were let go or fired, and Yellowknife is basically 1,000 miles north of Edmonton. It's just to give you a scale of how far away civilization really is. And I guess they couldn't get someone quick enough to fill those two spots, and because you're so far north, of course, I for some reason went up to the chef and just asked if I could get into the kitchen. And I've always been creative, and I liked the energy that the kitchen was putting out. And she said yes for whatever reason. I had no experience whatsoever, and I took to it right away. I just got into it, and I learned really, really quickly. I started studying really hard, and studying from other books that I was learning on the job, kind of French Italian theory. And I was studying Asian, Indian cookbooks where you scratch out your own curries and make those things. So I would do that on my downtime, is discover all these Indian flavors, and I was just overwhelmed with what the world had to offer. And it's from there on, I just put my drumsticks down and sort of continued in cooking. It seemed to be a little more steadier income as far as that went, and it was a happy ending story.
And I'm sure as a drummer, you probably had your share of really disgusting food in...
Oh, yeah, on the road?
Like on the road. Right?
Yeah,
you're so hungry you're going to eat anything.
From somewhere, right?
So did you actually go to a cooking school at any time?
No. I considered a cooking school about, I'm going to say about 8 years in from my knowledge from working in different places. So I was up in Yellowknife for a year, and I came back to Toronto and started working different restaurants around Toronto and worked my way up, and considered going into a culinary program. But I didn't see anything that I thought was interesting at the time. This was almost 35, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And I didn't see anything that was breaking out of theory of French theory and Italian theory. That's the basic common knowledge that you're taught from. And I didn't quite understand why they weren't introducing Asian concepts and flavors and other ethnic groups. And I thought that was kind of, a little bit behind in openness. So I continued to sort of just learn on my own and just study outside of what I was doing, and that led me to running kitchens and then moving up the ladder.
Because running a kitchen it's a huge task. I can't even imagine. I mean, I run a house with 6 kids. People say to me, 4 kids, 2 dogs, husband. Anyway, it looks like Thanksgiving dinner for other people every day of my life. So even from meal planning just for a family, it's a tough thing. Trying to figure out what you want to eat 3 days from now.
Yep.
Buying the stuff. I can honestly say that there are times if I'm putting a meal together that I can go to at least 4 different places to get the food for one meal.
Right.
Because there's places I like this and I don't like that. And then so I go to the other place where I like that and they don't really have this. And by the end of it, you've gone to 4 different places to put together a meal.
Yeah. No, it's a big job.
It is a big
but
job.
you work your way up and you understand the mechanics of how a kitchen works and what you're working with, the people that you're working with. And you can only design menus based on the strength of your team.
Right.
And you have to know that, because that's where a lot of restaurants fail miserably. Sometimes the menu reads beautifully, but when you eat it, you're not feeling the harmony from what you read. And that's probably because the chef has an understanding of how to put that together. The guy who designed the menu itself, and he could probably do a really good job at executing it. But once you hand it over to a team of people, depending on what level they're at and as far as their knowledge goes, they could become a totally different beast altogether. And so I think I see that quite a bit. I always, when I do menus, try to look at my weakest link and say, what could we, do here and pull it off with some sense of integrity.
And I think that's where a lot of home cookers or home chefs come into a problem, is they're usually a one-man band. And as one person trying to do an entire 3 or 4 course meal, that's a pretty big task.
It is too, yeah. I was doing one by myself and a dishwasher for the first 13 years of Cutara's kitchen with just the 2 of us. And now I have a little cooking team that come out.
A little posse.
And it's so much more fun.
Yeah, I could imagine
it's so much more fun now that it's not just me and a dishwasher. There's 3 or 4 of us sometimes, and everyone's kind of clicking. Everyone wants to be there. Everyone's enjoying it. Everyone gets it, and it's wonderful. By the end of the night, when we're finished, and everyone comes up to you and they want to thank you and shake your hand, and it's very gratifying. My job.
I can imagine.
Because a lot of times in the industry, you don't see the people that you're feeding. You're behind a wall and you're with your team.
Right, that's true.
So you don't have that interaction, whereas this is direct on. It's really, really wonderful feeling to know that you're making a difference somehow, and it's a very small way.
I was at a restaurant downtown last week, and I was really quite surprised. The chef came out and wandered around and spoke with people in the restaurant. And I thought that was a really nice touch. It made everybody in the restaurant, you could see people started to smile and they were nodding at him, and they felt like they were special, like that it meant something to him, that they liked the food that they were eating. It wasn't just the waitress who's really, really busy and rushing to get the next plate on the table for the person over there who looks like they have to get out in a hurry and stuff like that. It was a really calming effect. It was very nice. Very nice
it's food. Food brings people together for sure.
It does. Culturally,
good
it's a nice
food really
thing.
makes everyone happy and content.
Well, it should.
And you're a rock star.
Yeah.
When
you make a good dish, you are the rock
and
star.
everyone's happy with it. They're overwhelmed. They come out and they say, it's beyond their expectations. That's a great thing. That they've heard good things about it, but when the actual experience is even better than what they thought it was going to be, and that's great.
Terrific.
It's
is.
never gone the other way yet. So
Oh, well, that's good.
So we're doing all right.
Nobody's been throwing their steak
No,
knife
we
at you.
haven't had any life-threatening moments. Haven't lost
good.
an eye.
Good. All right, we got to take a little break and hear the weather, that kind of thing. You're listening to Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. We're talking with Frank Cutrara, and we've got Darlene Shaw in the studio as well. We'll be right back, so stay tuned.